Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Clubhouse Podcast. Today it is Season 2, Episode 7, and we have another beautiful review outlined for you. It is nothing else than The Boy and the Heron from Studio Ghibli. Yes, another new Studio Ghibli film is finally here. We have watched it, we have some notes, and are going to review it for you. Without further ado, let's get straight into our review for The Boy and the Heron. As we said, we have just seen The Boy and the Heron, or it has been a couple days since we watched The Boy and the Heron, but we now have collected our thoughts and are going to give you all of our notes. As we said, we have not seen a trailer for this film going into it, only some small artwork that was just released previously. So that is the only thing we really have seen about the film. We didn't know about the story or the characters, nothing going into it. Just that it was a Studio Ghibli film, the animation style, and we have seen some cover art. That was it going into the movie. And we can say that the story was a lot different than we expected it to be. It was really interesting, but it turned in ways that we did absolutely not expect this movie to do. We will not spoil too much, but we also think that the story was a bit hard to understand at points in time. The overall plot really was great, but it came to times when it was a bit hard to understand, and we had to think a lot or really hard to understand what they meant, what they were doing, and what was happening on screen. So it was a bit hard to understand. We watched the movie in Japanese speech, so we have not seen or heard any of the star-studded USA cast or English cast that featured actors as Christian Bale and Dave Bautista with others. We have not seen that version, but we saw it in the Japanese original cast, and we think all the voice actors were great. We also had Swedish dubbing, which was interesting was useful for understanding what they were saying. We don't know Japanese, sadly, but we think the Japanese voice actors still delivered on realistic and impactful voice lines, basically. Especially towards the second half of the film, we think it was a bit hard to understand. When they went to some other realm and stuff like that, and there were a lot of new characters coming in, we really didn't understand what was happening or how that part was connected to the earlier events of the film. We're not going to spoil that much. We're not going to go into detail, but I traveled to another dimension, which basically seemed to be the dimension or the realm for the dead. So seeing how that connects was an interesting experience, and at the end we really did not understand how it was all connected. It was a big thing of the film. We really didn't understand it all. We did understand much of the movie, but not every detail. You definitely think it was great. The animation was fantastic for this movie. It was more than great. It was absolutely stunning. There were some really beautiful shots, and the moments where the animation was really fast. For example, the opening of the movie when the main characters were running through a lot of fire and smoke. It really looked really great. Fast traveling animation looked the best of them all in this movie. When it comes to the story and the writing, we think it also was great. The story worked. Even when we didn't understand the whole part of it, we still think it was great. The writing felt natural. There were no cringe moments. And for what we understand of the film, it seemed to be doing just fine. There was also a part in the movie that made us seem like, oh shit, this is another thing about the multiverse. But it wasn't explored any further, really. So we'll leave it at that. The multiverse was a little bit tiny part of the movie, but not that much. So we'll leave it at that. You will have to think about it yourself when you watch the film. The movie, as we said, is a Studio Ghibli production. It is directed and written by the legendary Hayao Miyazaki. And the film stars the Japanese cast as Mahito Maki as Suma Santuki, or Mahito Maki is played by Suma Santuki. Pardon us, it was the wrong way around. The Grey Heron, which we thought was a little bit scary at times, especially in the beginning of the film, is played by Masaki Suda. Shuichi Maki is played by Takuya Kimura. Himi, which we also thought was an interesting character, we will go more into that later, was played by Aim Yon. You will hear me absolutely destroy these Japanese names now. They are very hard to pronunciate, but I'll do my best as I can. Kiriko is played by Ku Shibasuke, and Natsuko is played by Yoshino Kimura. And as we said, the English cast is really star-studded and features people as Christian Bale, Dave Bautista, Mahmoud Atiye, and others. So it was a really star-studded cast if you saw it in the English version. I think I would like to experience both and compare them, but for now I will only be able to see the Japanese version. There were many incredibly fun characters in this film. Some of my favorite characters were, for example, the Heron and the old ladies that you will, if you see the movie, will know what I'm talking about. There were some older ladies that were like housemaids and was taking care of certain people in the film. Himi, which is a person the main character meets. The main character, he is actually called as much as Mahito. Mahito meets in the other realm, and Himi is actually, we will not go into that, that's spoiler territory. Another important characters are the Wara Waras, which were so incredibly cute. They are basically tiny marshmallows that can float. That's basically what they are. You will see what we mean if you watch the film. They are incredibly cute. My least favorite characters in the film is the mother to Mahito and the old man. If he is the great uncle or the grandfather, he was a little bit foggy. We didn't really understand his purpose, or we didn't understand what he was doing and what he was there for. But he felt a little bit distant in the film. Maybe he is expected to be like that in terms of the story, but he was a little bit hard to understand, it felt like. If you are to be honest, we have not seen that many Studio Ghibli films actually. We have not seen Spirited Away. I think we have seen a part of it long time ago. It was a long time since it was released. But we are not that big of a Studio Ghibli fan. Not that Studio Ghibli films are bad, they are beautiful. Or at least it seems like it for what we have watched from Studio Ghibli. But we have not seen that many films, so we are no expert in this territory, that is for sure. When talking about world building in this film, it was really cool and interesting. It was also a bit confusing. As we said, they are in this main world and some other realm, and it gets a little bit complicated, but this other realm looks really cool and has some really breathtaking characters in it. The original world, or regular world, is also expanded upon greatly, and there is a lot of depth to it, if you would say it like that. You clearly see that this movie is a Studio Ghibli production if you compare it to other Studio Ghibli movies. So that's nothing, that is for sure, that's a thing that you will see. Some of my favorite moments and scenes from the film is probably, I don't know any great example, it's probably the beginning of the film, and when he is in his other realm, even though it was complicated, I felt like there was some interesting scenes when he was in this other dimension, especially his great dynamics with his Himi character that is in this other realm. She can somehow master fire magic or some sort like that. She is really interesting, and their character dynamics are great. So that's probably some of my favorite scenes. And many scenes with the Wara Waras are also so cute, and they are on top of the list also. I don't really have any major unfavorable scenes from the film. I really think that some of the more complicated scenes that you really have to understand with the old grandfather or the older wizard guy, if I would call him that, was a bit hard to understand, so that was probably my more unfavorable scenes. Overall, I would say I preferred the first half of the film. It was more clearly structured and easier to understand. It was more interesting towards the second half, but the first half I still preferred it. Not to say that the second half was bad by any means. It had many interesting additions in terms of characters and story elements, but I still prefer the consistency of the first half of the film. And the opening also, as I said, was really great with this fast animation running through fire and smoke, and I will just leave it at that. It looked really great. And as I said, I did not really like the second realm they went to, except for towards the end of the film, when it cleared up a little more and they did some more easy to understand stuff, if you would say it like that. That wasn't that hard to understand in terms of this overall story. There was only also one shot in the whole film that I noticed with a bit of weird animation. Overall, it looked like a perfect 10 out of 10 animation-wise. There was one shot that looked a little bit laggy when it comes to anime standards. That's maybe weird to say, because anime is often lower keyframe or lower frame rate than a live-action movie, per se. But I think there was one shot that looked a little bit weird that could have been more detailed, if I say it like so. And as I mentioned also earlier, that the heron character, the grey heron, looked a bit scary at first, and that was actually interesting. You were a bit frightened of him. If you watch the movie, you'll see that there are some scenes that are really not horrific, but they are like some child nightmare stuff, if you would say it like that. And when it comes to the characters, as I said, I really liked most of the characters. There were some that were more complicated. The main characters' chemistry were basically great, and that's what's most important. The story overall worked. The main characters had great chemistry. There was one character that was named as much as Kiriko, played by Ku Shibasaki. That character in this older format, or not oldest, but you will see there is two different versions of Kiriko. One that is middle-aged and then one that is older. The older version was more likable. She didn't get enough screen time, maybe, or get that much screen time. But the Kiriko that is a bit younger was not. She didn't really vibe with me. I didn't hate that character, or any means by that. But I didn't really feel the connection to it that great or that much. And as I said, I also had a difficult time understanding how the whole plot connects. There was something about the balance in this realm or universe also towards the end that I really didn't understand what they were aiming for. It was a hard time understanding. I don't know if that was just me, but I felt like some story elements were hard to understand in this movie. And if you look that this movie is maybe for a younger audience still, it's an animated film. I don't know if anyone that are younger than me, or a lot younger than me, would understand this whole story. Or maybe it's just me, I don't really know. I would overall say that this film still was better than expected, but it was also a bit weirder than expected. Some things I didn't expect them to happen, and I didn't saw them coming from miles. So it was a lot weirder than expected still. But the animation overall did not disappoint. It was 10 out of 10. So great. There was one part in the film, otherwise, that I would call the fish part, that I did not like that much. And it was connected with when they arrived at this another realm or world. It's connected to that. And this fish part didn't feel that exciting to me. It was also a bit hard to understand. I first thought that the heron in the film, but it was my original thought about the heron was too simple, because the heron is still in the title, so he should be pretty important to the movie, and he is also. So that was too simple, my original suggestion, so I turned otherwise towards another suggestion. I can say that much about it, but it really did not end up being what I thought it would be, so it is a lot weirder than expected. So if you really love Studio Ghibli, this can be an absolutely incredible film. And it's a great looking animated anime film. A bit too complicated, but it looks overall great and the story still works. Maybe I am just tired of thinking now at night when I write this script, but I still think the movie was a bit complicated. When it comes to the message and theme of the film, I don't really know how I would describe it the best, but it has to do something with endless love and maybe the fear of death. That you want to reunite with your family, but maybe always, or maybe you can't do it, basically. There were some sad moments in the film, especially when it comes to the life versus death thing that was balanced up in the story. And when it comes to this balance thing they were talking about in the other realm, I did not really understand it. It was a bit too complicated. And it movie also has something to do with that you can't always decide or bring back anyone, and that you can't always help, or you can't always help it. You can't always assist someone. You can't always, and sometimes you can't just do something. You can't. And there is also one scene I need to add before we conclude this. That was in the birthing chamber. There is a birthing chamber in this other realm. That scene, I absolutely did not understand its relevance. I cannot understand it. I'm sorry. But I did not know. I really need to think a lot more about the movie as a whole before understanding how that scene connects. But overall, I still enjoyed The Boy and the Heron. It's a great Studio Ghibli production. And I had heard previously that Hayao Miyazaki, that directed and written this film and some other Studio Ghibli productions, this may be his last film, maybe. So if it is, it's a great one still. A bit complicated, but overall I enjoyed it. If I would rate this movie, I would probably rate it at 3.5 out of 5 stars. That is because I had a little bit hard time understanding the great story, but animation is jaw-dropping, basically. Jaw-dropping animation. So that is basically it. There you have all our notes for The Boy and the Heron and our conclusive review. If you have any questions regarding this review or want to reach out to us at the Movie Clubhouse, you can do so at our mail in the show notes. We always answer everyone. So if you have any questions, just reach out. But we are also on X, previously Twitter, and YouTube, so you can reach out as us over there also. We will be happy to discuss The Boy and the Heron with you. But that is all for our review of this movie. Remember to subscribe to this podcast if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to, so you don't miss any of our newer episodes, because we are releasing multiple episodes a week at this time. Also, remember to leave a review. It helps us a lot. It helps us basically tremendously to rank this podcast higher and higher up in the list, so many more people will get to hear our enticing reviews. So if you want to do that, please do. It helps us a lot. That has been all for our review of The Boy and the Heron. I have been your host, Eddie, for the Movie Clubhouse. Until we hear you guys next time, have a great time watching.